Now, speaking of wonderful things, my friend Tim Kimmel welcomed into the world yesterday, he and his wife Darcy, welcomed into the world yesterday their fourth grandchild. How about giving it up for Tim Kimmel?
Man, I'll tell you, Mac.
What's that experience like?
Well, grandchildren are God's gift to parents for not selling your kids on eBay. I mean to tell you that we loved raising our kids, but when we started getting this next generation, be able to hand God's grace down that far. And then we've always observed something, and we wondered what it was about, and we figured it out. Have you ever noticed how grandparents get along so much better with their grandkids than those children actually get along with their real parents?
Why is that?
Well, the reason grandparents and grandchildren get along so well is they both share a common source of annoyance. And see, so we're spending our time.
A mutual enemy.
Yeah, so we're just enjoying. No, it is really something to see the children step up and assist God in a miracle and give that child all that hope and all. And then you've poured into him with his heart and grace, and well, it's just fun to see.
Tell everybody about your family, Tim.
Well, you know, we're like everybody out there. We're just trying to fall forward through life, raising our kids, and we have 4 children, and we have 3 married, and 1 who's in love with a wonderful girl, and should be married here soon, and we have the oldest one has 2 daughters, and the next one is just finishing up grad school. Next one's got 2 sons, and he's in seminary here in Dallas, and so we love being parents.
I know you're proud.
Well, yeah, but you know what, Max? I think all parents are proud of their kids, and they should be.
Yeah.
But that's the cool thing about it is that if you just have a parent that's proud of you, it's amazing. God, that's a God thing. He says, I can write the script for the future in your heart just with that one parent.
The influence of a parent.
Yeah.
Now, you've been committed to families your whole ministry.
Yes.
My introduction to you came years ago when my wife and I were living in Brazil, sometime in the mid-'80s, I guess, late 80s.
Late 80s.
And somebody sent me a copy of your book, Little House on the Freeway. Little House on the Freeway.
Yeah.
What a great book. And that was your first book into this whole topic of families and
that was about the hurried lifestyle and how it just got got a hook in all of us, and the powers of evil figured out they don't have to make any of us bad, they just have to make us too busy and they can steal our joy. And so that was kind of how to maintain calm and rest in the middle of the hurried world.
It hadn't slowed down, has it?
No. And we're, it doesn't work to go back to Walnut Grove or wherever that was that they live, because they have Wi-Fi in the mercantile there. So the hurried lifestyle is everywhere, but we can maintain calm and rest when we are connected more at the heart level of God, to God.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think we've got families that are so frazzled. Working multiple jobs. Used to be just 2 jobs. Now some moms and some dads are having to work a couple of jobs apiece. Just to any special counsel you can give families that are just so busy right now? Well,
yeah, Max. I don't want to oversimplify what we're up against, but I do think that when I distill the big picture problems that well-intended parents are facing today, I think probably the biggest one is I see a lot of frightened parents. They're just scared. They're intimidated. And the problem with fear is if we let our fears now define our strategy for raising our kids, we've already stepped off course to raise kids of faith. Because, God says, I want you to trust me in this. But the fact is, the world comes at us fast, and we're in over our heads, and maybe we didn't get a good run and start from the family, our family of origin. And so a lot of fear-based parents out there. And then if we want to raise them by faith, it's real easy to slip over a very thin line, I think, and put our kids on a performance basis with God. And you write all about this yourself. That performance basis, I think, is where we go south. And our kids can easily feel like we're just following them around with a kind of a spiritual report card. We don't mean any harm by this. Not at all. We're trying to help them kind of measure up to a good standard. But the problem is that's not how Jesus deals with us.
Right.
And when we deal with them different than Jesus dealing with us, then we get in trouble.
Yeah. If they can't find conditional love, unconditional love, at home, where are they going to find it?
In fact, I wish there was an app for parenting that we could just
Yeah.
turn. But I was writing. I wrote a little note to myself because I was thinking, what does God's grace look like played out? And here's what I wrote down on before I came in: an unwavering value and preference I give to someone, regardless of whether or not they deserve it at that particular moment. And see, if I, as a parent, can have that unconditional, unwavering attitude of favor and value on the kid, even when they're acting like the biggest knucklehead on the globe, it changes everything.
It's good.
And where I get that from is that's exactly how God deals with us.
It's how God treats us, isn't it?
It's how He deals with us.
Yeah. How is this different, Tim, for parents right now than it was, I don't know, 50 years ago, a couple of generations back? What's unique? What are the unique challenges that parents are facing today?
Well, we're raising our children in a culture that's very antagonistic to our values. It's a very sexualized world out there. Unless you're going to, I mean, some people would think, well, maybe if we could just raise our children in a hermetically sealed, cordoned off environment, we'd be fine. Well, that's
not going to happen, is it?
First of all, it's not going to happen, and that's a trap for fools. That is absolutely tailor-made to crash and burn on you. No, God wants us to raise kids that actually thrive in the middle of this hostile world. But we can't do it if the way we're doing it is we're trying to put, like a sin management. I see a lot of sin management, evangelical behavioral modification, and then we just kind of we try and stand on their air hose every time they get out of, and I just think that's not how God deals with me, and that's why I think God's grace changes everything. To me, God's grace is the game changer, and I want to say I'm not excusing His truth. See, we need to have families that are led by God's truth and tempered by His grace. And when we have those kind of relationships, then the heart connects.
Led by His truth and tempered by God's grace.
By God's grace, it changes everything.
Changes everything.
But see, I can be a very conscientious follower of Jesus and really dialed into His truth and distant from His grace, and I can get my kid to act like a little Christian saint, but the heart doesn't connect.
Right.
And it's the grace that connects the heart.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can, of course, read this in the grace-based parenting book that Tim has written. I have a hunch, Tim, that some of the parents who are listening in to this conversation are thinking about a prodigal child. And I have seen you really walk families through this very difficult relationship. What do you do when your child turns away or kind of hardens their heart? And how do you balance that? Can you give us some insight?
Well, you know that story in Luke 15. It's interesting, the context of that story. Jesus was actually being confronted by Pharisees because of who He was hanging out with. He was hanging out with some people that had been rejected by the powers that be because they had lost their way spiritually. They were the very prodigals that He ultimately ended up talking about. And he felt like, they felt like, what kind of a rabbi are you that you would even be hanging out with these people? And then He went on and told the story of the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. But the hope I get from that story, among many things, is here's parents, and they just beat themselves up when they think of this child that's lost their way, and they think, what did I do wrong? Oh my, it's my fault and all. And God's saying, wait a minute, hold it. Why are you beating yourself up? I'm a holy God. I am the finest father in the whole universe, and I can't keep my kids from rebelling.
Yeah.
Because God's, the father in there is God, isn't it?
Yeah.
And He's saying, wait a minute, there is no better father than me. I can't keep my kids from rebelling. Why are you surprised you can't? I'm not beating myself up.
So these are the expectations we place on ourselves.
Yeah, we put it. He says, but I'll tell you what, when they come home with their tail between their legs and they're all humiliated, I'm going to have a party waiting for them. I'm going to have open arms waiting for them. Because I'm not dealing with them according to their sin. I'm dealing with them according to my love. And that's where His grace changes everything.
Yeah. Not dealing according to their sin, but I'm dealing with them according
Yeah.
to
And that,
love.
by the way, that doesn't mean there aren't rules and regulations still in place. That boy came back and he had this party, but the rules of the house were still there.
Right.
The values of the family were still there. But I think, I just think that, in John 1:14, it says, the Word became flesh, He lived among us, we beheld His glory. Glory is the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And I think, Max, it's so easy for us to dial in on the truth side because it's so easy to quantify. We know what it is and isn't. And the behavior, but God says there's this grace thing. Can I try an illustration?
You do all you want.
Oh, I don't know. Let me try an illustration, see if I could explain grace to people in a relationship. Let's say right now, this situation we're in right now, since this began here, let's say, would you say everything we've done so far has been decently and in order and respectful and honoring to God and biblically correct, and Max is kind and what a nice guy, and our singing is to God's glory? But what if it was 20 degrees in here the whole time? What if it was 20 degrees and we're all dressed the way we are? See, it wouldn't matter how right we're getting it.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to respond to it because you're so cold. You see, I can get the truth exactly right. I can have the chapter and verse exactly right. And yet, in the heart connection, I can be distant. And that was the Pharisees' problem. Now, Jesus said, no one knew the doctrine better than they did. He said, but you missed the memo. This is supposed to make you more loving and kinder. And that's why, to me, grace-based parenting, to me, Max, I can summarize grace-based parenting in one sentence. It's simply treating your kids the way God treats His kids.
It's not that complicated.
It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
So when your kids act like complete idiots, and you just want to, taser them. No, you don't taser them. No, but that wouldn't be good. But no, whatever. I mean, you're just so frustrated with them.
Sure.
And all. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences, but you think, is that how God deals with me when I push all of His buttons? Because we do. He knows how. Them whom He loves, He corrects.
Yeah. He's the model parent, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's the model parent. So maybe the best thing for us to do is to think, okay, what would God do to me? What does God do to me when I rebel?
When I rebel.
Does He disown me?
No.
Does He kick me out of His kingdom, out of His house? Does He sever His covenant with me? He makes it clear what He wants out of me, but He also makes it equally clear, doesn't He, that He's never going to let me go.
He's never
going to let me go. And that's the kind of tether that we create with our children.
Because His love for us isn't based on how we're measuring up.
Right.
His love for us isn't based on what we do, it's based on what He's done.
Yeah.
And see, when we get that, it changes everything.
It's a very competitive world in which children live, especially teenagers. Athletics, academics. How do we counterbalance everything in the world that tells our kids you're more valuable the better you look, you're more important according to the grades you make, or if you make the varsity? What's the role of the parent in speaking into this very competitive world in which children and teenagers are being raised?
Well, I don't want to be a name dropper, but Jesus said,
I think it's okay to drop that.
the rulers of this world lord it over those allotted to their charge, but not so with you. Whoever wants to be greatest among you should be servant of all, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life a ransom for many. And I feel that the easiest trap for us to fall into as parents is to aim our kids at a future of success.
Wow.
It's just so easy. I mean, we're Western-minded people, that's from day one. And yet the problem with that is the way we quantify success in our world is wealth, beauty, power, and fame. Nothing wrong with any of those in and of themselves, unless that's what you're living your life for. Then you're an empty suit, and you missed it all. But Jesus weighed in on what real true greatness is. And so I think if we as parents of faith say our primary role is, I want to raise a kid who has a passionate love for Jesus Christ, and the way that everybody will know he has it is he has an unquenchable love and concern for other people. In other words, we raise our kids focused upwards and outwards, whereas the success lie is always focused inwards. It's about me.
Yeah.
And so I focus upwards and outwards, and that's where His grace changes everything. because His grace sets their hearts free, gives them the freedom to be different, the freedom to be vulnerable, the freedom to be candid, the freedom to make mistakes. That's what Jesus does. That's when I can do that with my kids. Then my heart connects. Then every once in a while, let's say, this was my son, and he did something really dumb, and well, Max, I'm sorry, but here are the consequences. But I don't necessarily take it. I'm not shocked that my son would go out and sin or do something goofy, because I gave birth to sinners. That's what they do. But I'm just going to catch him and give him the but never at any time is this about my relationship with him.
The thing I don't like about the phrase dysfunctional family is it suggests there's a functional one.
Exactly.
Out there somewhere. And I've never found one, and I've certainly never found one in the Bible. Have you?
No.
Every story of every family in the Bible, even the family of Jesus, was competitive and challenging. And yet there's hope for these families. There's hope for these families.
Yeah. Well, we all walk around on feet of clay. And see, I think that once again, that's where God's grace comes to the rescue. Because one of the things that I think makes it obvious that somebody understands the grace of God is that the arrogance and pride just can't come out of their mouth, because they say, who's kidding who? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I was a train wreck without Jesus. If Jesus hadn't come into my life, there'd be nothing I could claim. And the fact that he would even give me the time of day and then exchange his life for me on a cross, I don't deserve this. And then I think it also gives you a much more of a tender heart when people have lost their way.
Doesn't it? It does.
No.
You've got great kids. I've met all your kids.
Well,
I haven't met these grandchildren.
They have a wonderful mom, and their mom, I'm telling you, she's the brains of the operation.
You're not the perfect family.
No,
you're not a perfect dad. You're not a perfect mom.
Far from it.
Can you talk for just a minute to the mom and dad who are just starting out, who are doing what is it your son who had the baby yesterday?
Yeah, we have a son that had a baby.
Yeah.
He and his wife had a baby. He's in seminary here.
Yeah.
And we have a young son that just got on the fire department there at Phoenix Fire. So he's 6'4". He is ripped.
Is he?
He is.
Kind of like I am. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Think Max Lucado.
I'm thinking you might know a special blessing. Maybe it's just something encouraging that you could give to these young families that are starting out. They've got more diapers than they can keep up with. They're pulled in all directions. Everything's little, and they're a little intimidated because God has placed in their hands a human being or two or five, and they're trying to just make sense of it all. Can you speak, Mr. Gray Hair Granddad? Give them some wisdom.
Well, let me first of all tell these folks that I know something about their child, that this information I know about them might actually help them in how they parent their kid. Everybody watching me right now, I want to tell you something. I have a gift. I actually know if you gave me the name of your kid and their birthday, I know how long they will live. It's a gift. Everybody looking right at me? Every one of your children, I don't care when they were born, they're going to live forever. And because they're going to live forever, see, we've got to raise our kids with forever in mind.
That's right.
And that keeps us from getting so upset just because the day didn't go well, or this past week, or their teenage years, and they act like knuckleheads or whatever. That's okay. They're going to last forever. And Jesus did something wonderful. And then the second thing I would say is that seize the moment to touch them with grace. And do I have a minute to tell them?
Yes,
okay,
please.
just let me. I was reminded of this story, of this priority of touching my children with grace. One Saturday morning, I was awakened before dawn by our daughter. At this time, she was just a little girl about 5 years old named Shiloh. And Shiloh awakened me and before dawn, and she's waking, Dad, Dad. And you have daughters, they've awakened you like the Dad, Dad, time to get up and go on our date. The night before, I'd promised Shiloh I'd take her out for a breakfast date. So I looked at the clock and said, honey, it's still dark out. But Daddy, I got I picked this outfit out for you, and I fixed my hair for you, and it was all snarled and mismatched. But anyway, and I said, okay, honey. And I knew where she wanted to go was open because it was a convenience store that's open 24/7, 365.
That's where she wanted to have breakfast.
So I said, no problem. So we got down there right about dawn, and when we got there, she picked out a couple of donuts and some juice. I bought a cup of coffee, paid for everything. We went out and we sat down on a curb right next to this convenience store, and we're sitting there right there at dawn to have our little date. And there was a dumpster a few feet over from, but we're fine. We're over here. We're just having a little date, and she wanted to talk about the Sleeping Beauty video that she had been watching, the animated show, and she's all enamored with this. And I said, honey, what's your favorite part of that? And she said, Daddy, I love the part at the end when the handsome prince and Sleeping Beauty waltz together in a castle. And Max, I don't know what provoked me to do this, but I decided to reenact it. So I put everything back in the bags, and I picked her up right there. And I just started, and I'm up there, I'm just waltzing around with her, you know, and dancing away. And as I came around, there was a field right next to it, and there was new homes over there. And I looked over, and there was a man just about, 50 feet across there, and he was sitting at his kitchen table, and he's staring at me. And I'm waltzing away, and I'm looking over, and the thought crossed my mind. He's calling his wife and stirring his coffee, looking. Look, honey, there's an idiot over at the convenience store dancing with a little girl next to a dumpster. But then another thought crossed my mind that in a very brief period of time, some guy's going to come along and tap me on the shoulder and say, Mr. Kimmel, may I cut in? And they waltz them out of our life for good. And so you got to seize that moment because they're not there forever.
Go through the window while you can.
Yeah.
I remember when my children were small, it seemed like every person I met who had already raised their kids would say to me, they're going to grow up awfully fast.
Yeah.
And I got so tired of hearing it.
I know.
I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Now I catch myself biting my tongue because every time I see a father or mother, and I see how hurried they are, how busy they are, so concerned about working their way up the ladder, success. I want to say, now be careful, because they're going to be gone.
Do you remember the last time that youngest daughter of yours, you had read a story and she was sitting in your lap? Do you remember the last time she got up and walked away and never came back to sit down? We don't remember that because we didn't know that was it.
That's right.
We don't never know, so because of that, seize the moments.
We're going to seize it.
Yeah.
Tim, you and Darcy are a great gift to the world, to the United States, to the kingdom of God. And I want to thank you because all these years, you've been faithful. You've practiced what you've preached. You've loved your wife and raised your kids, and now you're raising these grandkids, and you're leaving a legacy, not just with your words, not just with your seminars or your radio ministries or all the things you've done, speaking at churches like mine through the years. But these kids of yours and these grandkids, they're going to long outlive anything you and I say are right.
Yeah.
And well done.
Well
done.
You. Thank you.
We're proud to have you.
Well, thank
God
you.
bless
You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, man.
God bless you. Thank you. What a great guy. Tim Kimmel. Any chance you get to listen or read something that Tim has written, you'll be glad you did.